A great father is an archetype, and so it can be a male or a female. But the masculine role of a father is very significant, and it has four key stages. Number one is the discipline of preparation. You cannot bring a new and innocent life into the world without, in a capitalist framework, money. In a very isolated framework, the commitment to spend the time to prioritize that child in growing up. You cannot just have a child and stick it with a babysitter and go to work immediately. You have to create a container. And because the future of the species and the complete dependency of that child is the responsibility of the masculine figure to provide for and protect, to prepare. It begins by an assessment. Can we do a good job? Now, this assessment is not casual. It means doing one's own work. Outlining one's traumatic history, outlining one's partner's traumatic history, because abusive intergenerational patterns continue until a generation is capable of rebelling, identifying and rebelling against the dysfunction, the disease, the abuse, which means recognizing it, acknowledging its impact, forgiving oneself for participating in it to some degree, forgiving the other for their ignorance, their cruelty, their stupidity, so that you can let it go, so that you can change the pattern, so that you can take responsibility not by blaming and punishing oneself, but by changing the pattern. I don't want to do this in my family. But to change the pattern involves releasing the inner child from the helplessness, the trauma, the pain and isolation of that wound. Because an isolated, traumatized child that has not been parented, because before you're able to be a competent father at a high level of innovation, meaning a leap forward in your family system, you've got to be and learn how to be a parent to your own inner child and your own inner adolescent. You've got to go back there at those moments of shame, pain, stupidity, ignorance, cruelty, and advocate and protect that inner child and say, no, not on my watch. And you've got to figure out through some studying, it might take 500 hours of preparation to be able to figure out what a good parent is. Now, people spend 1,000 hours watching mindless, addictive programming all the time and don't think twice about it. But one has to question the wisdom of such a cult where everyone is mindlessly addicting to media that does not touch on the core themes of their own lives, that doesn't educate them. Is that a cult one wants to mindlessly go along with, or might one want to diverge and say, no, given all the different priorities out there, there's Mr. Beast and his millions of bubbles and millions of pennies and millions of cars and all of this, very interesting. Or there's actually learning how to be a father, worth a few hours of your time, perhaps. In an intelligent cult, can you discern what's going to have the most impact overall? This person looks like a cute bimbo, let's get married. Or this person, I don't actually know how to pick a partner that's going to bring the best out of me, that's going to challenge me to grow, that's going to help me heal my deepest pain, that's going to help create a 10x life. I don't know how to pick such a partner. What are the ingredients of that? Maybe I need to learn to be that partner. Maybe I need to learn, what does it take for me to have the discipline of thought and discernment, and then the discipline of follow-through, because that discipline is the discipline of the Father. And it's not the discipline of punishment. So there's two very important things. There's the infliction of pain to cause pain. And there's the endurance of pain to create sustainable well-being. A runner that's trying to break a record feels pain, feels discomfort, doesn't necessarily enjoy getting up at 4 a.m. to do the daily run. But they're not enduring and pushing into the pain to hurt themselves. They're enduring and pushing into the pain to transcend it, to become more. And that's the difference between the punishing parent, the shaming parent, the destructive parent, and the disciplined father. The disciplined father is about creating the order and structure necessary to be one's best self, to give birth to evolution within the psyche. So, how do you prepare? You become a good father to yourself, because you cannot be a father to a woman, to a child. And it's a mistake to think that fathering stops with growing up. Your partner, female or male, will need fathering from you in some form from time to time, because trauma regresses an individual from time to time. A parent dies and the wind is knocked out. I don't feel 30, 40, 50, 60 years old. I feel 5 years old. So, do you know how to parent your partner when they are regressed and 5 years old? Do you know how to parent yourself when you are regressed and 5 years old? It is an absolutely stunning oversight in a cult such as our own that we don't even have this conversation. One can talk about baseball. Not a bad topic, but a leather lump hurling around on a piece of grass, more important than fathering? The score of the game more important than the score of one's parenting? Not in an intelligent cult, but this is why it takes courage. This is why there are so few fathers, is you have to rebel against the insanity of your cult, beginning with the hierarchy of priorities. Now, before you can intelligently organize your priorities, you actually have to have data, which means you have to be able to think and observe. You have to be able to gather data that isn't being presented to you. Because your cult didn't present you with the science of well-being in school. It didn't come to you and say, look, over the next 60, 70 years of your life, these 10 things, these 10 areas are going to have the single most important impact on your quality of well-being. If you do not address these 10 areas, you could be a billionaire and feel suicidal. It happens. You could be a millionaire and be suicidal. You could be well off and be suicidal. In the United States, more people kill themselves from agony they do not know how to escape than die in car accidents every single year. No. You think the education curriculum has anything to do with that? Do you think the absence of parental training has anything to do with that? Well, then why the fuck aren't these taught as central subjects at your local elementary school? And where are the fathers? Where are the strong advocates that call bullshit where it is? Hey, principal, get your fucking act together or you're not getting my kid. If you can't even prioritize your curriculum, you don't have the competency to prioritize, to take care of my child. You know, that's a fight worth having, not who left the toothpaste lid off or who's going to sit in the front seat. I mean, there's nothing wrong with fights. What's wrong is the profound ignorance of the cult to such an extent that we often fight for things that actually harm us. Our right to sit in front of the TV eating potato chips. Well, what about your right to think? What about your right to learn competency emotionally? What about your right to learn how to be an effective partner? Yeah. You know, an ignorant person doesn't know what to fight for. So, you know, this is the work of competent parenting, because if you won't parent yourself, if you won't stand up for these areas in yourself, you can't stand up for your family, and you can't stand up for your child. And you will teach them a template of complete apathy and laziness when it comes to doing the things that will really change their life. And so this is the crisis of an absence of healthy masculine energy, of healthy adult energy, because a child cannot be a good parent. An adolescent cannot be a good parent, psychologically. And we live in a cult where the psychological age of many people a lot of the time is under 15 years old, 17 years old. And we deify that because we're too ignorant to appreciate the power, the potency of what an adult is and can bring to a community. An adult is not trying to look cool. An adult is protecting the boundaries that stop a cult, a family, a relationship, a child consuming large amounts of their energy in destructive ways and focusing that energy in a way that leads to evolution. So this is all in the first stage of being a father, is to prepare psychologically, prepare financially, prepare physically, and prepare an environment, prepare a situation where your child has good odds. Because as your child is born and enters the infant stage, it is going to download the memes without questioning that you expose them to. Every single meme and value that you expose them to, they will import as templates into their body, into their brain, without reason. And that is 100% your responsibility. Do you have a child? Are you ready for a child? And Have you prepared an environment that's worth downloading? Would you want those memes and messages that they're going to suck in the first 6 years? Would you want those for your best friend? If not, you're not ready. This cult, to a large extent, is not ready to have a child. Oh, I guess we'll just see what happens. Is the passivity of an absent father. And what that child will experience in that passivity is, I don't matter. Because that's the message that the father is giving himself. Being a great father doesn't matter because I don't matter. And he's transferring that message to the child, and you don't matter either because you're just like me and I don't matter. So preparation is one of the most important areas of fathering. And you can see this in the craftsmanship and excellence, which is another aspect of masculine energy. Think of a terrific woodworker. Male or female doesn't matter, that hones their craft from the picking of the wood, the picking of the right type of wood, the cutting, the design, and making a boat, and preparing it, putting on the varnish layer by layer or layer so that it's ready to be birthed into the water and float and do well in the worst possible storm. That's parenting. That's fathering. That's fathering a life form, a creative act into the world and fighting for that creation. When you start a business, that's fathering. You're taking an idea and you're preparing and you're organizing for that idea to succeed. And if you prepare well and allocate the resources, 90% of all businesses fail. It's about, we didn't know this could go over budget, so the business fails. We didn't read anything about medical issues or our genetics so I guess we got a divorce and we didn't talk about this and this. There's so much passivity, which if we were in an excellent cult with an excellent set of parental statistics without so much abuse, addiction, trauma, depression, etc., maybe it wouldn't be so damaging. But you have a greater than 50% odds of severely damaging your child if you go with the flow of the cult. That's not kind. It's not competent fathering. It's not saying, not on my watch. The buck stops here. I'm not just going to take all of the unconscious diseases handed to me by an incompetent cult, handed to me by two children in grown bodies who had me as a child, and just give that to my child. I'm not playing that game. I'm going to work through the details. I'm going to evaluate and think this through. I'm going to invite critical thinking each step of the way. What's the message of this? What's the message of that? Is my kid worth something more? Is this family worth something more? How do we fight for that? That's the work of the father. See, and it doesn't matter in a gay or lesbian or whatever the names are that people want to use, of male, female, whatever. That doesn't matter. What matters is that there's a person playing this role in the couple. Could be both, good balance of masculine and feminine. This is the role of the fathering, of the masculine principle. Standards. Standards with who I'm going to have sex with. Standards with who I'm going to have a child with. Standards of preparing for that child. In service to the potential of the child. Because scientifically speaking, evolutionarily speaking, that child has a higher possibility field than either the mother or the father. It is a synergy. It is a third energy that if things are done well in that child can go beyond both the mother and the father. That's being in service to evolution. The transcendence of the third energy. If you botch it, then you took life's energy, combined it in a sloppy and careless recipe, put it out there, and it's of no use. It did not teach anything other than what we already know, that this is an incompetent cult that doesn't know how to parent. It isn't emotionally literate. We already know that. So having another incompetent, emotionally illiterate child raising in shame and abuse dynamics, we've been there. That's not a good utilization of energy. Your energy or your child's energy, and they will import the program before they have language. So, step one of being a good father is preparation. Step two is providing and protecting the infant and the mother-child bond that needs to be sacred. That infant needs to be the number one priority for a period of time. Maybe 1 year old, maybe 2 year old. And it is the masculine role to protect and provide for the mother and the child, physically, emotionally, logistically, financially, so that that cocoon can be without trauma, so that the mother is safe, so that the child is safe. Now, some countries and cults are more effective than the American cult. In Denmark, there is paid paternity leave and paid maternity leave. And you are considered a little bit suspect if, as a man, you just leave your infant and come back to work without taking a proper leave, because it is not competent fathering. So that's the second role, to provide and protect for the child until the point where they can provide and protect for themselves without trauma, with confidence. So in our cult, we define it arbitrarily as an age. You're 18, therefore you can provide for yourself. It's complete nonsense. It's not truly a fully age-dependent thing. Somewhere between 15 and maybe 21, maybe 23, somewhere in that range, depending on your competency as a parent. Because an incompetent parent doesn't teach their child the skills they need to confidently survive, number one. But they also don't ask their children to practice these skills from an early age. Confidence comes from experience. If you are babied by your parents, your muscles will atrophy. And if you are babied and pampered, and guilt-tripped into not being autonomous and having authority, you will not be ready at age 23 to leave the nest, because the nest was so soft and so suffocating that you didn't and couldn't develop any muscles. You have no confidence because they did not teach you survival skills in school. They taught you algebra. They taught you doctored history. They didn't teach you what you need to survive. You don't know how to build your house. You don't know how to drive a car. You don't know how to make money, how to make a sale. Anything useful has been left out of the curriculum in a way that fosters incompetence, that fosters dependency. Dependency on the insecure parent, that's the microcosm. Dependency on the insecure government. We want you to need us. This is a little bit more leaning in the democratic arena. We want you to need us. So we're not going to fight for you having the experiences that you need in school and in an early age so that you don't need us and we can get out of your lives, right? Because that's the big argument, right? Do you have a invasive government that tells you what to do and stuff, or do you say, hey, I'm an adult, get out of my hair? And you have that as a continuum, and then you have abuses of power that are all about enriching the politicians, and then you have more maternal, paternal governments, such as Denmark, that say, we, the government, we, the country, believe that it's important that every child has the presence of both parents in safety. And so we're going to tax the wealthy and we're going to care for our people. Now, I've interviewed the Danish. They love their country and their government. I agree. It's superior in competency to the United States. On every level that I could measure, it is superior. To go from 50% of your money going to the government, which is many Americans, to 80% of your money going to the government, which is many Danish, the Danish get 400% more value for that last 30%. So it's a good return on investment. The average American does not love their job, love their country, love their government, have beautiful architecture and parks, have a very high quality of living, have guaranteed survival, security, college education, health care, and a slower work ethic, meaning fewer hours for more rich social engagement. My time in Copenhagen was a higher quality of life by 400% over the average American experience. So it's more maternal, more paternal, but it's a nurturing parent. It's a parent that actually, Denmark could be called somewhat more parental in a way that ensures the survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem, and development of gifts and bringing those gifts into the world of its citizens. So it's a good parent. And that makes a big difference, on whether or not you want more parental energy or not. But the truth is that every one of us needs a strong parent. The only question is, where is it going to come from? Is it going to come from your country? Is it going to come from your family? Or is it going to come from you? You need a strong parent and you need a competent parent to get you up out of bed, to get you following your goals, to get you maintaining your diet, to get you following your routine. We father ourselves using the template of our fathers for the rest of our lives. But in the second stage, you have the providing and protecting of the child until such stage as they are confident and competent to internalize the parenting that we have modeled by how we parent ourselves, how we parent our partner, and how we parent them. That's the template they're ingesting. If you won't follow a routine, if you won't have boundaries, if you won't learn, if you won't listen, if you won't follow your own advice, that's what your infant will internalize. Because they assume, rightly or wrongly, that you're 20, 30, 40 years old and you're still alive. So obviously, some of what you're doing is working. And they don't have rationality when they take all those templates in. It's a wholesale import of what is mirrored around them. So your job is to see that they start off with a good template, because that's going to drive their relationship with themselves, with the world, with you, etc. For if they don't truly become an adult, which if you haven't become an adult, what does that mean? It means challenging your cult and challenging your family patterns to be a better parent. If you don't do that, you're not an adult. An adult is the synergy that comes from sympathy, the wholesale import of all the memes and data around you, antipathy, the wholesale rejection and questioning of all the memes and patterns around you, and then synthesis, sorting through them, taking the best, rejecting the worst, and continuing the evolutionary pattern. That's an adult. If you don't do that for your child, you're not an adult. I went to this fucked up abusive school. It was wonderful. You're going to go there too. Now you may cry, you may feel abandoned, you may think it's a bit strict that they shame you and humiliate you and do this and that, the other. But it's a wonderful institution. My father went there before me, and his father before me were proud abuse survivors of X. So you're just going to send me to this? You're going to ignore how miserable I am? And this is disgusting. This isn't fathering. This is repeat abuse offense. And the British have been proud of this for hundreds of years. You know, we're going to abuse our children the way they were abused in this. It's absolute nonsense. So you're going to protect and provide. You're going to fight for your child. Step 2. Step 3. You're going to teach and be responsible for teaching, directly and indirectly, everything your child needs to live a competent life. So what does a child need to live a competent life? They need social skills, not bullying skills, social skills, like they don't teach in school. You know, the teacher isn't modeling rapport, they're modeling dominance. They're not modeling thought and engagement, they're modeling memory. So you're not going to learn relationships in a dominance hierarchy, hypocritical framework at school. They're going to learn relationships perhaps with the relationship that you have at home with them and with your partner. Or you're going to take them out of school and teach them to have more equal, balanced relationships out in the world with mentors. So they need relationship skills. They need emotional literacy. They need to understand why they're feeling what they're feeling, how that relates to you and the family history, how that relates to the cult, and they need to stop shaming themselves for things like hate. It's a perfectly scientific feeling. When you understand the makeup of feelings and what ingredients, pain, fear, powerlessness, and abuse of power and nobody being willing to help, that'll produce hate every single time. You're feeling hate? Do you help the child understand the ingredients that produce it and how to participate with them to change the variables? Do you help them? As soon as a child feels powerful, they stop hating. Now, if you're too dumb to know that you're dumb, and your kid hates, and you say, that's bad, Christians don't hate, God doesn't like people who hate, we don't hate in this family, meaning we're sociopaths, God's a fucking moron, that's the creator of all life, a fucking moron who doesn't understand emotional literacy any more than your parents do? That's God? You're going to give that as the divine being to import into your kid? Or you're going to say, this is a relatively incompetent culture. It hurts people. It scares people. It doesn't help the people who are most in need. Look at how we treat the homeless. Do they have the most need? Absolutely. Do we treat them better or worse than someone in a mansion with a Ferrari? Oh, we treat them worse. So you treat the people who need the most help the worst, and who need the least help the best. Yeah, that's what we do. Well, how does that feel? To know that if you really, really need help in this culture, you'll be ignored and shamed and marginalized. You're looking forward to taking risks and failing, growing, trying new iterative things that could land you flat on your back like all new inventions do. You're going to do that for a fucked up cult that as soon as you land on your back will step on you and tell you we told you so? I mean, what kind of cruelty and stupidity is in such a cult? But are you going to teach your kid that their feelings are sane? It is disgusting. Yep, it is. It is frightening. It is. And then what do you do with these feelings and how can you change them? Here's what you can change at this age. Here's what you can change at this age. Here's what you can change at this age. So will you do this for your child? Or will you let emotionally illiterate, shame-based parents communicate to your child that there's something wrong with them because they're healthy, because they don't hide their feelings and lie about it? It's up to you. But a competent father advocates for sanity and competency, for effectiveness, for well-being, each step of the way. Now, a certain amount of that in a dysfunctional cult is learning the dysfunctions, but not telling the incredulous kid that we're learning these dysfunctions because their feelings and their ideas are wrong. But being candid, this is a fucked up cult. However, within this fucked up cult, if you will learn this fucked up thing and this fucked up thing and say you're fine when you're not fine and you can get certain flows. You can create certain things. It's not personal to you. We didn't fuck it up for you. We could have fixed it. We don't care enough about ourselves to do that. So you're getting our deficit in self-love. Well, now a kid knows where he stands. And you can just say, look, I'm incompetent right now. But you still don't have the full skill to take on your life. If you do, go off and do it. But demonstrate these thresholds, and you can take over your life. Show me your clean room. Show me your sales. show me your self-love. Show me your clear thinking. Show me how you're going to keep yourself safe. And if you can do a better job than me any step of the way, have at it and be praised. A competent father praises success, celebrates, transcends pride, ego, jealousy, and all that, to celebrate evolution in the form of their child. You went better than I did. You're smarter than I am. Because that's how evolution works. Because you can learn from my mistakes and start at a younger age. It's designed for you to be better. And if you're not excelling beyond me, maybe I've communicated too much of my own insecurity and fear. Because a tremendous amount of the programs running in our children's brains are unedited, wholesale information dumps from the cult, starting with the family system. We didn't prepare for you. It's not your fault. So you teach a child what they need to succeed. They need to learn sales. They need to learn decision-making. They need to learn hierarchies of values. They need to learn statistical probabilities. They need to learn competent, masculine parenting, to fight for oneself. And say, no, you're putting me in a box here. That's not the box where I get to bring my best contribution to this group. It's the box that protects your incompetent power position. Don't maintain your authority figure by protecting the audience, by protecting the group from people who can do the job better than you. That's not fathering. That's abuse of power. You know, for the good of the country, for the good of the family, for the good of the child. That's fathering. For my good, for my benefit, me above others, at the expense of the family, of the country, of the child. That's narcissism. That's a teenager that never grew up. Well, can you blame the teenager for not growing up? Or do you ask a cult, where was he initiated? When did he have a chance to learn what an adult was? And watch competent adults stand up for what's right. Where? 5% of Catholic priests are pedophiles? And the higher-ups protect the pedophiles rather than the children? Most politicians lie and know it? This isn't competent parenting. This is playing the power game. Well, we determine what gets internalized into our children. So you teach a child the skills of living well, of bringing sustainable well-being to themselves and those around them. Next. If you do this well, by the way, on a gradual curve, there will be a time, if you are not insecure and clingy of your child, don't leave me. I feel so unimportant. You didn't ask me. I mean, you've only been doing this for 3 years. You can do it better than me right now, but I feel insulted. You didn't ask. Well, what's my opinion about this? I'm 5 years old. I'm your parent, but I'm 5 years old. And you didn't make me feel special, so I'm pouting. Nope, we're not going to see your game. Nope, you didn't ask me about this. You went and did this on your own. That's not the focus of a competent parent. It's the focus of a great deal of parents, but it's not the focus of a competent parent. It's not the focus of a competent father. Competent father wants to know when you rebelled, when you kicked me out of the decision making. Did you excel? Did you go beyond what I taught you? Or did you regress? I don't feel like cleaning up my room, so I'm not going to listen to you anymore, Dad. I don't want to drive on the right side of the road. I'm a free person, right? Did you regress and unlearn the skills of the father? Or did you grow beyond them and say, I'm now ready? You did a good job, Dad. I can think now. I've got the habit down and I want to iterate it a little bit for my personality. I've got this. Thanks, Dad. And I'm on my own. What's the father's reaction? Is it shame because I have no value other than to be a father? That's why you need a marriage. That's why you need friends. Or is it, I'm proud of you. Go get it. If you need me, I'm here. I will teach you the best I know. I will admit what I don't know. Part of my training is to help you find good mentors, how to connect to good mentors. If you need me, I'm here. If we need to find another mentor, we'll do it until you can do that. And other than that, I'm proud of you. You're taking competency to the next level. That's competent fathering. To provide enough competent training experientially to generate confidence. And through confidence, independence. If you get put in a 747 and you've never flown one, here, kid, take over the 747. You will rightfully feel terror. You don't want to kill 500 people, but you know darn well if you don't press the right levers, that's exactly what you're going to do. And so you don't want the exposure. You do not want to be put in a position you cannot deal with. Parents and the cult put our young people, whether it's in the military, in work, in romantic relationships that they do not know how to deal with, and then shame and punish them for not knowing how to deal with them, and provide nothing but humiliating commentary. It's fucked up. It is a fucked up sociopathic cult in a number of areas. And anyone who would wish that on their children in an unedited and unrefined form is a sociopathic child who is devoted to the abuse dynamic with their own father, who has not grown up. My dad was perfect. No, he wasn't, and neither are you. Every single human being is imperfect, because every single human being can greatly expand their potential. And your job is a minimum of a 30% iteration. But while you're at it, why not a 10x? Why not a 10 times better parenting job than your parents before you? Why not? Why not aim for that? Are you worth it? Are your kids worth it? Is the cult worth it? And even if you decide that none of them are worth it, are you willing to do it anyway? You're willing to do it because that's also a masculine principle. I may not deserve it. I may think I'm unworthy. I may not have the right credentials. I don't have a degree. But damn it, I'm willing to create this anyway because I can. I'm willing to create excellence and value because I can. How about it? Because I'm willing to. Are you willing to succeed to teach that principle to your child? Girl or boy, doesn't matter. Every human being needs a healthy template of masculine and feminine energy. And the masculine energy goes for it, pursues excellence. That's competent fathering. The last step, if necessary, is to shoo the child, not the human being, shoo the child out of the nest by refusing to do it for them. I held your back of your bicycle. I've held it. I've held it. You've got this. You've got this. You are ready to ride the bicycle. I'm going to let go now. No, don't let go. Okay, all right. You need to learn another skill. I just want you to push me, Dad. I just want to stay a child forever. Just want to stay close to you, Dad. Well, for a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, this is very healthy. But at some point, before you push someone out of the nest, which can be incredibly traumatic and cruel if you have not bothered to teach the things that you actually need to learn to survive. Everyone needs to know how to type. Everyone needs to know how to write. They need to know basic arithmetic. They need to be able to drive a car. They need to have their paperwork. They need to have enough money saved up, etc., to get their own place or whatever. They need to learn how to apply for a job or start a company. They need to know sales. They need to know good communication and negotiation skills. They need to know how to cook, how to eat. At the very least, how to pick, order what food and understand its effect on their body. They need to know this stuff. They need to know what affects well-being and health over time. They need to know this stuff. And once they know it with confidence and they've got it, it's like, I've got this. That's independence. That can be a very gentle takeoff, where you can't even feel the plane lift off. A really good pilot takes off and you can't feel the plane leave. Am I still on the runway? Is it still taxiing? Oh, it's off. Okay. So that was a good liftoff. So a child can launch that way, just gradually off where they're not shoved. The more incompetent the parenting, the more fear and lack of confidence the child will have, and the more of a shove may be necessary. It's ultimately up to the father to decide at what point you can fly using your own wings. Because if you believe you can't fly, but you can fly, it's partly the father's job to provide a little bit of a push, to model it, to demonstrate it, to test it, to show it, and then say, you're on your own, kid. Fly. I'll be here. Until you get that you can do it. Until you get, it's the father's job to stay present and willing to respond until the child becomes an adult. Until the child says, I can do this. I can earn my own money. I can ask a girl out on a date. I can do this. I can drive my car. I can clean my house. I can make my food. I can pay my taxes. I know what to do. You see, it's not as hard to be a competent parent as it is to be an incompetent parent. Because to be a competent parent is to line up with evolution and life. And every human being in the history of humanity wants to feel good sustainably and doesn't want to feel bad chronically. We're already wired. Number one. Number two, moving through this stage of parenting feels good. Preparing the right time for a child feels better to the parent, to the cult, and to the child. And that's what we want. Everyone's wanting to feel good. When you have a child, when you're not ready to have a child with a parent who doesn't know how to parent and has different, the worst thing is you have two incompetent parents arguing about two divergent, incompetent ways to raise a child. So, it feels better every step of the way for every single person to do this well, which means life's on your side. When you prepare well for parenting, when you provide and protect well, it feels better to you, to the mother, to the child, than if you don't. It feels better to people going by. A mother hitchhiking and breastfeeding because there was no masculine presence to protect and drive that mother to the hospital, or it doesn't feel good. You look at that and you say, it's crappy, because it is. It's unnecessary, it's incompetent, it's cruel. It doesn't make any healthy person happy to have this amount of abundance in technology and not take care of a fucking child. How pathetic of a cult. How unparented of a cult. How unfathered of a cult. Because an unfathered cult creates men who don't know how to father. And men who don't know how to father create unfathered children. And we have an epidemic of unfathered children by unfathered men who are still children, because the cult does not raise fathers. It raises abused children and adolescents. We all pay a huge price, but no one more than the child, because the child is experiencing it with the amplitude of a giant. A giant is infecting a giant world relative to the small size of an infant, and a child is infecting that child with a mountain of bloatware, of corrupted virus-filled software that the child has zero protection to reject. It's just a constant download with no protection. And we take that level of responsibility and impact. Say, oh, they're just a child. That's exactly right. They're just a child. Every single virus being imported into their brain is your responsibility. And if they hate you because they hate themselves and they hate the one who generated that program, is it a wonder? How dumb do you have to be surprised? Usually dumb enough that you don't know that you're dumb, which is the dangerous kind of dumb. If you're dumb and you know you're dumb, you can get help, you can learn, and stop being dumb. But if you're dumb and you're proud of it, because you're so dumb you don't know that you're dumb, and you give that to your kid, they're going to believe you. They're going to think that you actually knew what you were doing. And you didn't. You didn't value yourself enough to learn. You didn't value us enough to learn, to raise a competent child. It's all about value. The cult didn't value you enough to do this. You didn't value yourself enough to do it. The cult didn't value itself enough to be someone that would model it for you. So it's a crisis. It's our crisis. It's a crisis of competence. It's a crisis of value for every single one of us. The cult is a fractal representation of the individual, and the individual is born as a fractal representation of the cult. So that liftoff point where now you're on your own because you can do it. Now you have served evolution. You've combined two family systems in a synergy. You've taught everything that both systems know to do well. You've alerted the child of the flaws. In a healthy parenting situation, you will identify the family system and its flaws. Your mother's a narcissist. No, my wife is a narcissist. She's not a narcissist because of you. She's a narcissist because she didn't have parents. She had children. And she didn't learn to be an adult. She thinks the world's all about her because she's still 7 years old emotionally. We're going to try and get you to an older age. It's going to be tough with a 7-year-old mother, but we're going to do it. We're going to do our best. You're right. We are a hypocrite in this area. Number one, we're absolutely not perfect. Number two, this is coming down from the grandfather's side. This is coming down from the mother's side. You've got all of these messages in your body. We apologize. We acknowledge it. Please work with us the best you can, but also grow up. Grow up so that you can iterate beyond us. Use that as an impetus to really leave the house as soon as you can so that you can take this to another level. Be honest. Help the child, the adolescent, develop a competent map of what's good and what's bad in themselves, in the cult, in the family system, relative to intelligence. Intelligence is measured by the efficiency with which time, money, and energy, or time, money, and natural resources, is transformed into sustainable well-being. That's intelligence. Ask your teenager, rate the intelligence of this family. How much energy is being spent in various ways, and what's an iterative design? Invite the teenager's idealism to recreate the world and deal with them around that issue. Yeah, I could be a much better father in this area here, and I'm too lazy. And if you're lazy like me, then you'll end up, in this kind of a situation. But you're right, that's a better design. I don't believe in myself. I'm stuck here. This is my father gave me this. I hear this voice in my head, so I don't go there. I don't excel. I'm hoping you don't have that voice, but I still have it. I'm still believing the voice of my grandfather who told me I couldn't do it. And I'm not trying. You're right, son. That is a losing attitude relative to what I could be. But here's where I am improving. My father gave me this as well. This one I fought. This one I worked through. So I inherited this program. I iterated this, and this, but I'm still giving you this part of the program. It was too much to deal with. There's no support in the cult. I had to do this, and this, and I acknowledge that this is an imperfect system. That is empowering to an adolescent. It's vindicating, makes them feel more important and valuable. It is valuable. What you're basically saying as a parent when you admit where you and your cult are fucked up is you're telling the adolescent, you are more valuable than our self-image. What I mean by that is a parent that is so narcissistic that they don't want to admit that they lied, right? They're so narcissistic. First of all, they lie. Expediency, to get a benefit, right? Honey, go clean your room, and then I will do this for you. So it's expedient. I want you to do something quickly without me figuring out how to coach you around that. So I get that. That's my first narcissism. Secondly, I don't do what I say I will do as a parent. It's my second narcissism. Why? Because it doesn't benefit me, right? It's all about me, the fucking narcissist. And then, finally, I don't want to feel like I'm a schmuck that backs out of what I said I would do, and that I'm a liar, and then I'm a hypocrite because I tell you not to lie. So I pretend I didn't lie. I reinvent reality and ask you to believe a new lie, that I didn't lie. And then when you try and pipe up about that, I punish you, glaring, hitting you, telling you not to talk back, and that you don't talk to your parents that way, which is another duck. And every single one of those messages is the messages of a narcissist that's saying, you don't matter, kid. You don't matter enough to teach properly. You don't matter enough to keep promises to. You don't matter to apologize to. And you don't matter to clean up your mess. You have no value, kid. The only thing that has value is my narcissism. It's all about me. That's not a parent, by the way. That's a narcissist. That's not an adult, by the way. That's a traumatized child or teenager in a grown body. And it does severe harm because, unfortunately, the child's psychology does not question the competency of the grown-up. They assume that the grown-up is right, which means they assume that they really have no value. And that is the crisis of a narcissist raising a child, is the child will believe the message of the narcissist that I have no value. Now, when you give up public image and expediency and lies and addiction to educate your child, the message is you do matter. I'd like to be a narcissist. I'd like to be expedient, but you're more important than that. You matter. So I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to apologize. And I'm going to support your right to protest my incompetence when I am incompetent. And I'm going to say, you're absolutely right. Now, I may say, you're absolutely right. I am incompetent in this area. I've made mistakes. And you know what? I'm still incompetent. I'm getting overwhelmed and irritated. I don't know how to handle these feelings that are coming up. It's not your fault, but I still need you to shut up and do what I tell you because I don't know a better way. And you don't yet have the skills to do this for yourself. So shut up, do what I tell you, put up with my incompetence, and go read some books on parenting and stuff, and we'll look at this later. But I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for piping up about my abuse. I'm not going to lie and pretend that this is some wonderful parenting technique when I've just had it. And in an emotionally illiterate cult, I don't know how to manage my feelings. In fact, I feel ashamed of my feelings in an emotionally illiterate cult that shamed me every time I had these feelings. So right at the point where you'd like me to be intelligent, I'm feeling an overload of shame that I don't know how to deal with either. And my parents always hit me when they felt this. And I don't want to hit you, kid, so please back off. Because you're bright enough to know that if I am as incompetent as you tell me that I am, it is stupid to ask me to be perfect. But it is intelligent to study harder, figure out your life skills faster, so that you can leave and get your life together. Let's work towards that together because that is an intelligent response. We're not dealing with adults here, but many parents are not adults. And so the question is, to what degree are you going to pass the shame of your incompetence to your child by pretending that what you're doing is an adult versus at least admitting it? And I think that the greatest harm we do to our children is lying to them. I think that the greatest harm that we do to our children is doing all the fucked up, incompetent things that parents are doing right and left all over our country. But then rather than having the decency to admit to our children we're doing fucked up things right and left all over the country and it's not your fault, we turn around and call this love. We turn around and get righteous. We say, don't talk to this or we'll punish you. And might makes right. The reptilian program. I think that's how we harm our kids enough. It's not enough that we hurt them and are incompetent. We ask them to go crazy to guarantee that they cannot see clearly for the rest of their life, to protect our feelings. That if we had been halfway decent as adults, we would have worked out before we had kids to enough degree that it's at least not hitting us completely blindsided. These are the 4 stages of competent fathering: preparation, protecting and providing, education to competency, and a gentle nudge and support to leave the nest and become independent emotionally, financially, physically, sexually, creatively, mentally, to become a unique pattern of energy that moves beyond, that outgrows the limits of the family system, with the full support that all evolution involves change, and probably for the better. And so, please, son, please, daughter, outgrow our ideas, teach us where we're wrong, learn new data, go to other cultures that do things better than this. And don't be satisfied with a carbon replica of what we gave you, of the best we did, because we weren't satisfied with our parents either. What we gave you was better than we received. And we want what you give your child to be 10 times better than what we gave you. We want to see you growing, learning, doing these things. Question it all. Teach us what you're learning. Now that is a parent. That is a father, the shepherd that takes new life, carefully stewards it all the way through the process, and gives birth to an independent pattern of energy that does not exist anywhere else in time-space, anywhere else in the universe. It is a unique pattern of energy, a synergy, and it's going to go forward as a thread of life into the future, becoming and transcending itself. That is a father. That is a parent. There's different elements in the nurturing and supporting and different principles in the mother that we're not focusing on here. But that is the highest shape of a human being, to synergize a new energy and give birth. A teacher is similar. It's not the full expression of that, because you don't begin with the unconscious infant download and all of that. But a teacher that teaches these types of things. A coach that teaches these types of things, that parents basically, that fills in the gaps, a therapist that fills in the gaps of parenting. This is love. It's adult love. It's not about the narcissistic addiction. It's adult love. It's about being of service to life and evolution. It's fulfilling the function of transcendence in the hierarchy of human needs, to be a part of something bigger than oneself. Every competent father is part of something bigger than themselves. because what they give birth to will iterate, consume, digest, spit out, and evolve what the competent father gave and turn it into something better. And the father that can't transcend his own ego is going to pull his son back. Go to my school, do what I did, copy in my footsteps. I want you to be a carbon copy of me. But the father that has reached enough competency and abundance to know what fathering is, to be about serving something bigger than self, wants the child to be the best version of themselves, understanding that that will transcend the limitations of the father. That's the greatest joy of an adult who has fulfilled their human needs. So in order to be a father, one must know what adult love is. It is loving enough to care. It is caring enough to take time. It is taking enough time to see. It is seeing enough to understand. It is understanding enough to empathize. It is empathizing enough to attune. And it is attuning enough to succeed through a feedback loop. You could say it's attuning enough to develop a successful feedback loop. With what? With the progression of human needs to survive, to feel secure in that survival, to experience and create love and belonging, to develop self-esteem, to develop our gifts, discover what our gifts are and develop them, to bring those gifts abundantly into the world, and to become part of something bigger than ourselves. If we will love ourselves enough to care enough about ourselves to take enough time to see ourselves, if we will love ourselves as an adult, we will fulfill and bring ourselves to a point of transcendence, to where it is our innate yearning and pleasure. See, transcending before you're surviving and have your survival and security in place is not transcendence, and you will not feel good about it. But after the abundance of bringing your gifts into the world and feeling that abundance inside and out, transcendence is natural. It will make you happy if you have progressed through that hierarchy of human needs. That's when you can be a father. And some of that can grow up a little bit with the child. I mean, you may not be fully at transcendence in the infant state, when your child is an infant, but before you can truly celebrate your child going off into the world as a unique life form, you must have reached that point where your greatest joy, having filled up the self and the psyche with its human needs, where your greatest joy is becoming part of something bigger than yourself, giving birth and supporting a new life form to evolve. Remember that the universe came out of nothing 24 billion years ago. And now this planet is one of trillions and trillions of masses and billions of different species, insects and all of this, all coming out of life. But the universe started 24 billion years with less than the size of a pea. This big. That's the starting block. Well, your child, your daughter, your son, is this big as a starting block. By the time they go off into the world to bring that pattern of life forward, first of all, it's a huge head start in the races. They're not starting with helium as the building blocks of their future. They're starting with your family system and the mother's family system and all billions of years of evolution. They're starting with a whole genetic code. They're starting with cult codes. But life is going to continue as long as the species survives. Your child and its iterations are going to be out there, populating the stars, giving birth to new worlds. I mean, believe me, if a universe can come out of something less than the size of a pea, give your lineage 1 trillion years, carried in the cells of your daughter. What will that be? And can you bow down and serve something that will be so much bigger than you? Because that is when you become great. When you can serve authentically, spontaneously, something so much greater than you. That's when you become great, because you are the father. And you cannot father without being a mother. You are the mother of something great. Thank you. Hi, I'm Dane Rose. All knowledge begins with a paradigm, and out of that paradigm comes an idea, an awareness that we adopt, reject, or synthesize into something better. It doesn't become wisdom, it doesn't become useful until we take action, until we integrate it into not only our thoughts, but our feelings, our body, our words, and our way of being. For that to occur, we have to move from the passive media paradigm into more active engagement. In the link below, in the More Information section, is an invitation to join a very small, deliberately filtered, high-quality discussion with a group of people who share a common language and want to work with these ideas, with me and with one another, with the sole goal of creating 10 times more sustainable well-being for ourselves and those around us per unit of energy invested. Thank you for watching.